Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 118 of the longest tenured Denver Nuggets spin-off podcast in the world. Welcome to the DNVR Nuggets' Serbian Corner. My name is Miroslav, and before we begin, please let me remind you to like the video on YouTube. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the DNVR Sports YouTube channel and DNVR Nuggets podcast channel. The audio version is perfect for your commute or to make your office/home office time more bearable. If you want to support the show more directly, you can become a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/MiroslavCuk, just like my Seco tier supporters, Peter Plummer and Daniel Lynch. Let's start with a short recap of the week. First, the Pelicans game. After huge 5 days of rest, the Nuggets travel to New Orleans without Nikola Jokic, who had personal matters to attend to. The Pelicans' absence of 7 rotation players, basically playing Brandon Ingram and G League level players, was a blessing in disguise. MPJ played well, 24, 6, and 3. Payton Watson added 18 and 5. CB had 15 points and 5 steals. And even Dario Saric, who stepped into the starting role for Jokic, had 9 and 8 and 5. It all came down to mano a mano duel between Brandon Ingram, a high-scoring player nobody wanted this summer, and Jamal Murray, Nuggets' best player when the big guy gets the day off. Ingram had 29, 9, and 7, and Jamal scored 16, but only 7 in the first 3 quarters. Probably the worst loss this season. Grizzlies game number 1 came 2 days later, and after that embarrassing loss in New Orleans, I had a little faith in the Jokicless, Gordonless team. Unfortunately, I was right. The team looked like it didn't have sufficient aggregate basketball skills to compete against a team that started Jalen Wells, Scottie Pippen Jr., and also played the newest Nuggets killer, Jay Huff. Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. combined for 23 points on 1 of 10 shooting from beyond the arc. Dario Saric had a double-double of 10 points and 10 rebounds, and Julian Strother scored 19 off the bench. The Nuggets scored 90 points total. Very depressing. Grizzlies game number 2 was a better one, though. That one proved what Matt Moore always says. It is incredible how much the will to compete can swing a game in the regular season. Luckily, it was the Nuggets who made this huge effort and turned themselves from a team down 20 to the Grizzlies 2 days before into a team up 20 in this game. Russell Westbrook recorded his first triple-double as a Nugget and 200th triple-double in total, becoming just the 4th Nikola Jokic teammate to do so after Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, and Bruce Brown. Jamal Murray was still lacking burst, but played his heart out and finished with an efficient 27 points. Michael Porter made 24 without a made 3, and Christian Braun continued his amazing string of games. The Nuggets finished with 15 steals and also debuted Trey Alexander in a non-garbage minutes for the first time this season. Unfortunately, Vlatko Čančar injured his surgically repaired knee again after he landed on that leg after a dunk. Bad luck for Chucky. Just a quick recap of today's media availability. So for tomorrow's game versus the Lakers, Nikola Jokic is still questionable because he did not take part of the practice today with the other guys, and Aaron Gordon is officially out for this game as well. Vlatko Čančar, his injury is serious, but right now the Nuggets cannot tell us if it will be season-ending or not. There are some options that might, cause a bit shorter leave. We'll see. We'll see what happens there. Okay, my guest for today is one of my most frequent guests, the host to the delightful league-wide NBA podcast called Hardwood Knocks. He is also a writer at the Bleacher Report and a damn good one, if I may say so. Welcome back to the show, Dan Favale.
Wow, thank you so much for a kind intro, Miroslav. Thank you for having me back as well. Always a pleasure to talk to you and any Nuggets fans that might be watching. I will say, so I feel like national people are always poo-pooing fan bases. Nuggets fans seem to have been among the more welcoming fan bases, even when I disagree with things that they clearly believe. So shout out to you, shout out to them. Always dope to come back.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. So far, so good. Let's hope the team stays in good waters for a while, so everybody could be as positive as they were for now. But in the Hardwood Knocks spirit, how the heck are you doing?
I'm doing well. Zero complaints over here. I think we've gotten a lot of good basketball. I think I've seen people complaining about how many people are complaining about the basketball we've seen, which I guess I'm in my silo because I haven't seen too much criticism. I've enjoyed this season. I mean, the injuries, they kind of stink. Obviously, the Aaron Gordon stuff with Denver specifically, Jokic not being there with the team for what is it now? It's gonna be like close to 2 weeks if he plays again on Friday, which honestly, I look at it as Nikola Jokic getting that amount of rest is kind of terrifying for the rest of the league. So the injuries and the absences for sure have been a bummer, but there's been a lot of surprises, a lot of preseason things I got wrong, and that's always fun to like go back and rehash. So I have zero complaints over here.
Okay, so a couple of days ago, maybe 3-4 days ago, I'm not sure, you recorded a really nice podcast on Hardwood Knocks with fan or fiction, sorry, team, and the fan or fiction team for the Nuggets was whether Nikola Jokic is the MVP favorite once again. And I will ask you a bit of a different question today. Is Nikola Jokic the only MVP candidate whose case improves when he misses games?
I'll say no, but it definitely improves more than I think when other players miss games. Like if you have Jason Tatum miss a game in Boston, I think his MVP case probably gets hurt. It used to be when you had Joel Embiid miss games in Philly, they kind of built up his MVP case, but then he comes back, doesn't look like Joel Embiid, and he always takes a while to ramp up. So, and it's tough with Nikola Jokic because he doesn't typically miss games. Like that's the other part of all this. And so his MVP case, it's right smack dab in your face when he's on the court. But even in games where he's catching breathers, however few minutes it's been, the case becomes stronger to me a lot of the time. So I would say right now, the only player, if we're talking real MVP candidates, that I could see would maybe, if you took them away from their team for a couple games or a few games, would have a similarly strong, oh, this is how important they are, is Shea Gilgeous-Alexander in OKC. And even that is iffy just because they're so deep that they just might hold teams to 50 points while he's gone. I do believe, though, that people fail to understand. Again, I think Nikola Jokic is the MVP, but like Shea is very important to that offense. When you look at the secondary creation, like I've seen Thunder fans and media not complain, but analyze, oh, like Alex Caruso's pretty passive. And it's, well, yeah, that's Alex Caruso. Like you have J Dub. When Chet Holmgren was healthy, you were exploring stuff with him. But I actually think that Shea Gilgeous-Alexander might be, in terms of total usage, Giannis could be up there right now, but the Bucks are just sad. In terms of good teams, maybe even more so than Luka at this point because Kyrie's there, like so central to the survival of his team's offense that's probably the one I would comp most to Jokic. But he's another one who, when the Thunder aren't tanking, he doesn't miss games either. So
Yeah, I actually don't know what to do with my hands. If he misses the game tomorrow, it will be fourth consecutive, and I believe that's like the second or third time for it to happen in his NBA career, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, I just don't know what to do. We luckily had that second game in Memphis when the team played really well and won against a scrappy Memphis team, without some guys, but Nuggets were short kind of to actually feel some optimism about the other guys, and this is why the title of this show is kind of the other guys are getting into the right lane. Let's call it like that. But tell me a bit about Joker's start to the season. So he is 30, 14, and 12, which qualifies for a 30-point triple dozen, trademark Miroslav Chuk. And he's like shooting like 56% on 3-pointers. and I don't know how many steals and deflections and stuff like that. Like the defense is really relying on him a lot in the starter minutes, at least. So is this the best Jokic yet?
Yeah, I mean, which is stupid to say, but you just look at what I'm. There's no adjectives to describe what he's doing, and I mean, like him bumping up his 3-point volume and efficiency on a team that needs it, like doing more for that. Then this is not a shot at him, but like I expected Christian Braun to be taking way more threes per minute this year, and it's like no. Like his actual permanent threes are down, and like Jokic is just going to up that volume. You mentioned the aggression on defense. We were trying to poke holes in his MVP case on the show. And you can't, if you watch the Nuggets, you just pay tangentially attention to them. You can't even use the like the defensive stuff. You need to plan around him now. I think the best way to frame what he's doing is that he has a realistic chance, assuming he meets the game's benchmark played. Like this is someone who might win the scoring title, the rebounding title, and the assist title in the same season. I haven't looked up or cared to look up whether that's ever been done before. Maybe during like the Wilt Chamberlain heydays, but here and now in the year 2024 leading into 2025, that would be absolutely ridiculous to even see him finish top 5 in scoring on top of leading the league in rebounds and assists. This is just someone who like people keep the trendy thing to say, oh, we're going to have some uncomfortable conversations about where he ranks all time if he wins another MVP. Screw that. Like those conversations should have been had like 2 years ago. Like this is someone who is tracking towards being one of the 10 greatest basketball players of all time. And I don't know if that's out there. I'm sure Nuggets fans have said some like pretty inflammatory things, but like that's what this season to me so far has been is, oh, this is a top 10 player, potential top 10, top 15 player of all time who just kind of knows it, understands it, and even just reading what his team needs from him. Like we'll see what it's like when he comes back, and maybe this, some of the lineups they've discovered without him, they can translate that over. But we don't view Jokic, even though he's been one of the most clutch players over the past half decade, even though we've seen him have monster scoring performances, we've never viewed him as a quote unquote scorer, kind of similar to LeBron, where it's just like you always considered him, he leads the league all time in points, but he's always been known for his playmaking. His trademark play is a defensive possession when he blocks Andre Iguodala in the NBA finals. And with Jokic, it's just, oh no, like he has that gene, and he recognized this season, at least so far, it's not just we're not going to be contenders if he's not being aggressive as a scorer. You might not even make the playoffs, the play-in, if he's not going to be on pace for top 5 all time. I mean, I did not come prepared with my all-time lists, but that would be when you have Jordan and LeBron up there. That'd be tough to crack. But this is one of the all-time greats playing the best basketball of his career, and if he continues to play like this, I don't know who even has a chance of winning MVP over him.
So Adam Mares is the maestro of Nikola Jokic analysis, and he has this theory that Joker is basically a 33% shooter in regular season, but a 40% shooter in playoffs, because in playoffs he realizes he needs to take 3-pointers because of the way the other teams are guarding the team. And I got a recent confirmation for that theory from Serbia's head coach Svetislav Pešić, who said that before the Olympics this year, he said to Nikola that he will need him to shoot more threes because, first of all, he's the best shooter on the team, which sounded pretty crazy if you have Bogdan Bogdanovic of that team. But also because the spacing in FIBA basketball is much tougher than in the NBA. The court is smaller, and there are no defensive 3 seconds. So it's much more important to create more space by jacking more threes, and we're actually seeing the explosion of 3-point shooting in FIBA basketball right now. Do you think that Joker realizing that there is not sufficient shooting on this team made him into a 3-point shooter, and that he was like, yeah, I guess I'm going to have to do this time around?
I probably wouldn't doubt that. I mean, we all know the team shot profile at this point. And the fact that they have a top 10 offense anyway is actually like amazing. And we know Jokic is one of the smartest basketball players in the league, maybe one of the smartest basketball players of all time. I think, yeah, he can pretty clearly recognize that, and he might be most comfortable not taking, and it's not, I mean, again, he's not like taking 9 threes per game. He hasn't gone the Anthony Edwards route, but he has upped his volume, and to hit those at the clip that he's hitting them before he had his time away from the team. No, I don't expect him to hit over half his threes all season, but like you look at what and we've seen hot shooting seasons, or we should say high percentage shooting seasons from beyond the arc from him before. We've seen extended stretches of him doing it. But my guess would be, I mean, you'd be more plugged into this team than I would, that, okay, he looked at the makeup of this team, kind of saw like the way the offense, and it's not just a matter of they need my scoring, but like if he's a threat from beyond the arc, and teams treated him like one anyway, but if he's even more of a threat than he was, well, that's going to open up the floor for everybody else, and then should make a lot of their secondary stuff easier.
Okay, there is one more recent MVP, not on as great of a path right now, but we'll talk about that behind this short break. Don't go anywhere. And I'm going to talk to you guys about Empire Today, because if you think about flooring, Empire Today are your guys. With Empire Today, you get shop-at-home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a price match guarantee. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring, so of course they have copycats, but they can't beat them on quality, service, or speed, so they say, made-up stuff and stuff like cheapest prices in the business and so on. Empire Today would never do that, because the ones who would do that would put in your home something that they wouldn't put in their own. The philosophy of Empire Today is to help you find what you need, not overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. What they leave out of their selection is as important as what they put in. Their virtual floor designer is a great way to see how new floors will look in any space. Flooring is all Empire Today does. They live and breathe flooring, so you can be confident you're getting honest, upfront advice. They service their own warranties. If an issue does arise, just call Empire. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use the promo code DNVR. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/DNVR for details. That's empiretoday.com/DNVR now. Okay, we are back. And then I mentioned there is another recent MVP who is not enjoying the start to the season as much as Nikola Jokic is. And we got that report of a team-only meeting in Philly when Joel Embiid was being called out by Tyrese Maxey for being late for all the team's activities. Joel not feeling comfortable with the team's offensive schemes, etc. How do you view the situation in the Sixers camp? By the way, they are the worst team in the whole association right now by the record. And how would you contrast Embiid against Joker as a superstar personality?
Well, the start is disastrous, and you could point to the injuries, which I think, of course, matter. Their big three not playing a single minute together, and then Paul George hyperextends the same knee that kept him out to begin with the other night. That becomes an issue because now you start to ask, Tyrese Maxey looked like he was just going to return. Are these three going to play together before Thanksgiving at this point? Who knows? The situation seems pretty dire. I do think there's an element of it to me that feels overstated because Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid are homies off the court. That's well established. So if someone's going to call him out, it's fine that it's Maxey. It's probably a bigger issue that it was leaked at all. And I know people have liked to trace the lack of accountability on Embiid's part back to the process and them letting too many of those players get away with things that wouldn't fly on other teams and not building up the culture. It's also been years at this point, and he's been under multiple front offices. If it's a culture problem, it's not on the process or Sam Hinkie at this point. It's okay, well, why isn't Daryl Morey addressing this? If this is a big issue, that has to deal with the latitude they've decided to give Embiid as an organization. And if you want to rein that in, just do it. I don't think this idea that Joel Embiid is lazy or he's the reason that he's injured, I do find it ridiculous. He's not someone who seems to hate basketball, to hate his job. His body has just betrayed him on a number of occasions. Has he always been in shape? Probably not. You could say that about a bunch of players. I also think one of the reasons this is being a little overstated, again, the injury situation is dire, but like it takes Embiid a while to ramp up. We saw it in the Olympics. We saw it last year when he came back for the Sixers. And now he's going to go through those motions now. And the fact, I can't remember who they were playing the other night. He like turned on the Jets in the fourth quarter. Joel Embiid is still Joel Embiid. Would I ever pick him to build my team around, like instead of Nikola Jokic? Absolutely not. And there's been debates in the past, and they were probably closer in certain seasons, especially the one that Joel Embiid won MVP. But I think the biggest testament to Jokic is that I think you can look back on that season, and I'm not the right person to ask because Jokic was my MVP vote that year. This was just like, that was classic voter fatigue stuff. Like, this is someone who, if we were being honest, we probably could have had this conversation about LeBron too during his heyday. Jokic should probably be working towards his 5th MVP award right now. And so when it comes to Joel Embiid versus Jokic, I don't really view there as being a debate. But when it comes to Philly's situation, you have to be concerned. But they have trade chips to play, especially when December comes around. And then also having the worst record in the league at this point just means that you're 3 losses out of a top 6 spot in the East. So like, that's something to keep in mind. Now you ultimately need your guys to be available enough to make up that ground. I'm not saying the Sixers are going to be contenders, but this is a team that just needs to make up 3 losses in the loss column right now. That is more than doable with the personnel they have. And I don't know how much we can realistically take away from their performance overall when they've been missing like 2 of their stars at any given turn. I think less than 5% of their minutes so far have come with 2 of their big 3 on the court or something ridiculous like that. And, through that, you kind of found like, oh, we might have something in Jared McCain here. So you are discovering things about yourselves. I do not think the situation in Philly is good, but this idea that it's doomed, if it's going to be doomed, it'll probably be because of injuries, not because of the process culture from however many years ago it is at this point, 10 years or whatever.
It's strange. Everybody deemed their offseason the best in the league because they were the only team that got an all-star level player in the free agency. It is something that happens really rarely in recent years. The all-star players just get traded, not signed on in free agency. And yet somebody leaked full quotes from that meeting. And we got confirmation even from Paul George on his podcast. By the way, how crazy is that?
The Sixers are making their own news cycle. It's like when ESPN reports a trade rumor and then that same rumor is debunked by another ESPN reporter. It's like, so you got to create, look, the content machine, everybody wants content. It's constantly churning. Kudos to Paul George for clickbaiting the hell out of his own team's strife.
It's just crazy. It's just crazy. I would honestly ban podcasts from the current NBA players, but what do I know? Like I'm guessing I'm not on the same page with Adam Silver's vision of money making machine that is the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, Adam Silver, that's another story. They want to move the NBA Cup to not compete with the NFL regular season already when they invented the NBA Cup so that it provided an alternative to the NFL schedule. And they've decided after less than a year of doing it that they might move it. I understand it from Amazon's perspective because they're going to carry NBA Cup games and they have the NFL during that time. But I don't understand it I don't understand a lot about the NBA's business model. That is interesting. I honestly I see clips. I don't listen to a lot of player podcasts. Paul George is actually one of the better, more candid ones from what I have heard and consumed, but I do find them to just be, I mean, we all live in an echo chamber a little bit, but you very rarely get the once in a blue moon, you get the Paul George where it feels like it's a little bit more candid, even if you dislike Paul George. It all feels just like very vanilla or a chance for them to rehash old stories, which is fine, or just provide their slanted point of view of things. And a lot of them, at least in my experience, don't go that deeply. So I've never consumed them. That would be an interesting rule that players can't have. They have so much free time, though. Like, what else are they supposed to do? Paul George and Draymond Green got to get those podcasts off, man.
I would get their wish to be online, to be in the public space more. Just don't read the ads, Dan. Like, you're earning millions of dollars. Like, do you really need all of those? Like bookkeepers money?
Here's my thing. As someone who we've had complaints about ads on our show because there ended up being more, which I have fixed. But it's just like people want to consume content. They don't want to pay for the content, but they also don't want ads. It's just as a content creator, that frustrates the heck out of me. I know these guys are making millions of dollars, but like someone's backing this. So like it's like Yeah, I don't have a problem with them reading podcast ads. I do, if it ever is infringing upon their actual job, which is getting paid all this money to play basketball. I will say it does take a special brand of sicko to be, because I get frustrated with the constant negative feedback loop of content creation, especially from a league-wide perspective where fans, and they're correct, they're going to know their team better than you a lot of the times. But to be an NBA player or anyone just in the public eye, having these massive following, having to deal with that negative feedback on a larger scale, and then consider, you know what, I'm going to do some things so that I can get critiqued even more and get even more of a negative feedback loop. I respect that kind of masochism at this point.
It's true. It's very true. Okay, we'll take one more short break, and after that, we'll come back to the Nuggets. Don't go anywhere. Okay, we are back, and as I mentioned, Dan, and I mean, it's your job. You hate the Nuggets just as you hate all the other NBA teams. I mean, all the fan bases know that you hate everybody. This is why you talk about NBA teams nonstop. And you trashed the Nuggets for the offseason, as I mentioned. This summer, losing KCP, not replacing him with another veteran, counting maybe too much on the youngsters on the team. And since then, Nikola, as we mentioned, put that insane string of games that actually inspired the question of whether he could carry the team regardless of team's flaws. He can't, but whatever. What is your confidence level in the Nuggets playoff chances as of today? And does it have to do more with the aggregate value of players on the roster or with the current value of the team's second best player, Jamal Murray? While we're still talking about players not always in optimal shape.
So I feel better about the Nuggets than I did over the offseason for sure. As to the reason why, aside from it not being Jokic centric, I do think we've probably seen more growth from the kids than I was expecting, or at least hints of it. And I think one of the bigger deals has probably been like Michael Porter Jr. kind of didn't start off the season too great, but he's played a lot better. I have more confidence in the defense for sure after what, and I think it has the potential to be, I think they're 11th right now in points allowed per possession. It has the potential to be even better because Aaron Gordon's not playing at the moment. So I do feel better about the Nuggets' overall chances. I still question though, I would say most of it has to do with Nikola Jokic though, like just free and clear, or maybe their core lineups, if you want to frame it that way. I know that their depth has had some recent bright moments, but like you want to isolate 3-game samples or isolate a win over the Grizzlies. Hey, great. It's awesome that Russell Westbrook and Jamal Murray have a positive net rating now for the season without Nikola Jokic. That's a big deal. You can't win the minutes without Nikola Jokic. I'm more looking at it, right? Like at what point, like does Russ's energy that he brings on the court, like how far does that get you? This is still someone who's shooting a disastrous clips from the floor, right? 51% at the rim, which is just, that's not good. So I question what the rotation and the depth of it and the variability of it can be like in a postseason setting. I don't know that I felt worse about their I guess you can't feel worse about their backup center situation relative to seasons past. Maybe because we've seen Nikola Jokic miss 3 consecutive games. Dario Saric played fine the other night. That was still one of the worst off signings of the season. Just in the player option, giving him the mid level. I'm not going to back off that at all. It's just not going to happen until he strings together a bunch of good performances. And so with the injury to Holmes, that throws a wrench in those things. And yes, you could say those players aren't going to play a ton of minutes come playoff time. But like you need to survive the regular season. And so I still have a lot of questions, even though I like a lot of these individual players, I still have so many questions about their depth. And I think that's going to be the storyline for them, at least nationally, maybe all year, especially if Jamal Murray just continues to be up and down, because maybe you feel better about it if Jamal Murray looks like killer Jamal Murray on a night-to-night basis. But like even him, he kind of seems like he goes through these existential dilemmas when he's playing without Nikola Jokic. And not in the sense of, I think Jamal Murray sucks. It's he needs to figure out like what level of aggression is he going to play with. Sometimes he might seem too focused on playmaking or not scoring enough, or is he away from the ball too much? Have they found something with playing him with Russ who can dominate the ball and that frees up Murray to do his stuff away from the ball more? That's something they're going to need to figure out. And maybe, again, the stretch without Nikola Jokic has helped them do that. I don't know how you look at this team's depth, though, in the macro and just feel fantastic about it.
There is this new notion that appeared recently among Nuggets fans and also Nuggets analysts is that maybe the Nuggets can turn their game into not being as reliant on Jamal Murray as they've been in the recent years, especially the last 2 years. And mostly it's because the two-man game between him and Nikola Jokic was the most, a lethal two-man game in the whole league for a while. And now the Jamal hasn't been objectively the second best player for the team until today in aggregate. Do you think the Nuggets could get away by playing Jamal in a lesser role during the regular season and maybe up it just as the time comes for the playoffs?
I guess so. What does that look like? Is it you're just tying him even tighter to the Nikola Jokic minutes, or when you're playing him without Jokic, you're talking about just like moving him off the ball almost completely and then playing, really leaning into the rust of it all?
Yeah, I mostly mean about playing him off the ball a lot. Like we've seen even Trey Alexander in this last game. So Jamal was really playing a lot off ball without Nikola Jokic on the court, and even with Nikola Jokic on the court, honestly, because he's been handling the ball more than ever, comparing to previous seasons. So that's just the idea. Like if the offense is more egalitarian, which is actually more difficult to guard in the regular season for the other teams. Do you think that's sustainable, or should they ramp up Jamal harder than that?
That's interesting. I think it would be sustainable, and rather than viewing it as a reduction, could it just be an optimization of like who Jamal Murray is, or comes to optimizing again specifically, like we know what he's gonna be when Jokic is on the floor regardless, but like maybe optimizing those minutes when he's not with Jokic. It sure could work. He's always going to be important to them when it comes to crunch time, because when you look at just their personnel, if you need someone to create a basket going from the outside in against a set defense, like there's Jokic and there's Murray, who you could begin to trust. Like you're not going to trust even Michael Porter Jr., who's we've seen a little bit more like self-creation from him, like getting inside, getting to the paint this year. You're not going to necessarily trust him to do that. You're not going to. Well, if you're trusting Russ to do that, there's I don't like, what are we doing here? So like, I don't think it's unsustainable or wild to suggest that. Can he handle the duality of that? And maybe he can, but like we've seen, I think Donovan Mitchell is a good analog for this. He's kind of an injuries mucked everything up last year, but he's kind of only just beginning to, I don't want to use the word understand, but thrive while toggling between these two existences, where in certain lineups or on certain nights or on certain possessions, he has to be the primary attacker. But a lot of the other times, like, no, like Darius Garland's going to run the offense. And so Murray has plenty of experience, I guess, doing that with Jokic on the court. It'd be interesting to see what that looks like at a higher clip during the non-Jokic minutes. But maybe it streamlines things for him, because even as we're talking, his usage rate during the non-Jokic minutes is actually down compared to his usage rate with Nikola Jokic, which supports the theory that he's a better play finisher than maybe a table setter or a play creator for others.
Yeah, well, when you don't have the huge target like Nikola Jokic, it's harder to rack up assists in those non-Jokic minutes. But let's talk. I would love to talk about Dario Saric and his contract, because I love Dario Saric for many years, and I agree with you that he actually looks, when he runs, he looks like he's on the second night of the back-to-back every night. Like he's just hurting his ankles, his knees feel to be hurting too much, and he's actually pretty tender, I would say, while moving. But since Dario is at the best the ninth most important guy on the Nuggets, and I don't have you for 3 hours here, I want to talk about Christian Braun now, because Christian Braun has been sensational comparing to what most of us expected of him this season. What did you see from him so far, and how confident are you that he can be a legit heavy minutes playoff guy. And why not? Maybe even a better piece than KCP last year.
Yeah, I mean, he's a monster, especially when I mean, defensively, I think when you're talking one-on-one, we saw signs of this last year that if you need someone to defend Anthony Edwards or Luka Doncic, like he's going to be better suited for that with KCP, where maybe KCP feels like he might have the floor awareness or floor navigation down a little bit when we're talking about getting screened, perhaps a little bit better. That also comes with being an older player. Christian Braun's defense, like the dude is just, he's a monster there. And then the way his scoring has come, like the clip from three is fine. I still personally would like to see him take more of them. But like when you look at the way he's able to get downhill away from the ball or just out in transition where he can be absolutely annihilatory, this is probably someone who, as of right now, I'm sure he's in the most improved player discussion. But if you go back to his first year when we were all kind of shocked that he contributed to contributed to a championship team, I don't know that I had him being as plug and play on the offensive end as he's become. And I think when you get into now, could he expand his role a little bit and do more as a playmaker or anything more with the ball in his hands? I don't know if the roster will ever ask him to do that, but I have zero doubts that he can be a high volume, like postseason player at this point. I mean, I think he's honestly shown that he can be in 2 consecutive postseasons, which is kind of wild because he's only played 2 full seasons to date. So just like this dude just comes in. I know he's older. I know he won. They call him a winner at every level, but it's pretty incredible. And so I think and also just the ability to continue. I'll compare him to this. I was thinking about this when you sent me the rundown. You look at how much he's scoring and like some of the point totals he's had. I don't feel those points coming all the time where it's just like, oh, Christian Braun is 19. Like when did that he's scoring entirely within the flow of everything. It reminds me of not so much the current version, but like the peak play finisher version of Anthony Davis, where it was kind of, you looked up, it was, oh, Anthony Davis has 30. And it's like, it's not someone who's bogging down the offense or you necessarily have to run all these plays for or dedicate touches to. He's just scoring entirely within the flow of the game. And it like, I'm sure there's a better analog or comp for it, but like, that's what it's like you watch these games like, oh, he has that many points. Like you've seen them, you've watched them, but you don't, not that you don't feel them, but you don't need to feel them because he's just so scalable to whatever the Nuggets are doing. And the fact that it can keep up in lineups without Jokic, because I think that's the primary concern with some of these guys, especially someone like Peyton Watson, where do we think that he might have taken a bigger leap if his minutes, when you're at full strength, just by virtue of coming off the bench, you're going to play without Nikola Jokic a little bit more. And so that harms him. But like Christian Braun just seems like the stuff he can do scales to pretty much any iteration of the Nuggets. And I have zero. And now if you want to ask, can Christian Braun be like an all-star? Like that's a different debate, but I have zero quibbles about the player that Christian Braun is right now and what that means for the Nuggets in the playoffs.
Christian Braun, his fewest points this season in a game is 11. Like he's been in double digits in all of his 13 games so far, which is pretty remarkable. And you mentioned you don't feel he's scoring a lot, but he is. That reminds me of Nikola Jokic, actually, because there are these games when we look at the game and why he's not shooting the ball at all. And then you realize he has like 24 after third quarter. And then he, goes up to 35 by the end of it. But yeah, Christian is amazing finishing around the rim this season. I don't know what are the numbers, but anecdotally, he is finishing amazingly this season. He's
at
also
69% at the rim this year, which is for the position he plays. Like that's pretty good. And for working in lineups sometimes that don't have the best spacing, I would argue that's even better. And so, I mean, he's certainly doing a little bit better of a job where what is Peyton Watson shooting? Basically what Giannis shoots at the free throw line, but on dunks. So he's having a better year there than Mr. P.
Yeah, and also he's been handling the ball so much more than what I could have dreamed of this season. Like they've been using him as a de facto point guard a lot this season so far, which kind of helps me with the projection of Nuggets not having enough ball handlers this season. Because, before the season started, we had Jamal Murray and we had Russell Westbrook as the only NBA level point guards on the team. It's nice to be high on Trey Alexander, but he is a two-way guy. Who knows how many games he's going to get this season. at a total. So I'm really high on CB because of that as well. Another guy that got the chance to start in Aaron Gordon's absence is Peyton Watson, and I know that Michael Malone doesn't have many options there, but are you surprised about him not playing micro ball that would have fewer youngsters at the end of the games, but trusting guys like Peyton Watson?
Am I surprised that he's not? What do you mean? Like that he's
not playing like four guards lineups, inserting Russell Westbrook for the end of games, but instead of that, he's actually trusting Peyton Watson.
I guess given Michael Malone's track record of skewing towards the veterans, that would be a surprise. But I think when we're talking about who are better players or who are more useful players at this point with what's available, that wouldn't surprise me. You mentioned like CB getting more ball handling responsibilities. Payton Watson, someone I would still love to see kind of in certain of those roles, because I honestly think that he might be the more fluid long-term on-ball player than a CB. And again, CB just like in terms of facilitation or like being able to break down someone after a ball screen, that's probably something he's outstripped expectations for sure. Peyton Watson fascinates me though, because I think that his ceiling is just so high, man. We know what he can do on defense. And like, I make jokes. There's been some oddities with the mixed dunks and what he's shooting at the rim overall this season. I think he's sub 60% at this juncture. And teams are still just like, they're daring him to shoot. Their bigs are on him a lot of the time. But like, if you just give him like some space, or even just, can he capitalize on, off the catch, and like people are like, it feels like teams overreact to him getting downhill if he has the ball than people credit. And so if he could just eke out some facilitation from those, there's a lot of situations where I'd love to see could we expand Peyton, if I'm the Nuggets, can we expand Peyton Watson's role a bit offensively? I don't know if if you're at full strength, I don't think that's going to want to be a crutch that you go to, but he is probably one of the most like polarizing quote unquote prospects in the league for me still, because I think that he's been wild. He's been great at points, but I just feel like he's kind of only scratched the surface of all the tools that he actually has in his armory.
You mentioned CB and his ball handling comparing to Peyton Watson's, and I agree. Peyton Watson really looks fluid handling the ball. The one thing I still don't have enough faith in him, Peyton Watson, I mean, is because he feels to be rushing too often. He is just playing too fast at times, unlike CB, who for some reason is always playing at the right pace. I don't know what kind of talent is that. I'm guessing that he took the last season's loss in second round hardest of them all, because it was his first season of his career where he didn't win the biggest possible trophy of his season. So I'm just really impressed with CB's posture and his way of behaving on the court, because his pace is just perfect at all times. And Peyton Watson is somebody who is still he looks like Bambi on ice from time to time, especially when he's trying to finish. And you know what? If he would just hit the exact proper speed he should be using at that point, he would make some amazing finishes around the rim, because he's so incredibly long. Like the talent is just there.
I wonder how much he gets in his own head at this point a bit, just because you can even see it with like, I think it was the other night against the Grizzlies where he had like, it should have just been a dunk and it was a layup attempt instead. It was just like, is he kind of in his own head a little bit at this point, because he's had so many just not great experiences at the basket this season? He is just bar none a fascinating player though to me. So I think, you mentioned whether like Christian Braun can be a high rep player in the playoffs. I think it probably remains to be seen, like, can Peyton Watson be that guy? And you mentioned he feels like a dials always go to 11 type of dude, which that can be beneficial, especially if you're trying to make up for a lack of, I guess, set creation in certain lineups. If you need someone just to get out, up and down the floor, and Jokic isn't on the court for sure. I honestly don't know how they put him in. Like, how do you rein that in would be like my question. Like, is it tying him to Nikola Jokic more? You look at his shooting percentage splits and his night and day with and without Nikola Jokic. And so is there a way, if you believe in kind of some of these non-Jokic lineups that you've gotten success from over the past 3 games? Is it, well, like, do we try and tie Peyton Watson a little bit to Jokic more? And then that would, I would assume that playing with Jokic is going to help you learn how to operate at the correct pace and sort of read the room from that regard.
Okay, let's take one more short break, and then I want to talk to you a bit about Russell Westbrook. Don't go anywhere. Okay, we are back. So I don't know how much time you have to scan the fan bases online, but I'm going to tell you that Nuggets fans are really high on Russell Westbrook still. Like, we are 13 games into the season, and there's more love than hate for Russell Westbrook so far. Do you think it's Michael Malone and the way he's using him, or the amount of minutes he's giving him when everybody's healthy? Of course, he was a starter and having minutes when Jamal Murray was not available.
Mhm.
But in all those games, I mean, he works really nicely next to Nikola Jokic, and as you mentioned, he already has a positive net rating next to Jamal without Nikola Jokic on the court, which is pretty surprising. Do you think there's a big possibility for him to be an actual positive impact player in the playoffs for the Nuggets this season?
I mean, no. Look, in terms of, I don't have an issue with them playing him, because where are you, even at full strength, where are you supposed to go with your secondary? Like, who do you want more of Trey Alexander right now? We know that Jalen Pickett's not going to be the answer. So I guess I haven't had, like, relative to the resources that are at Denver's disposal, I don't know why you would have an issue. And you also do, I hate to lean on intangibles, but, like, it matters. Like, if there's someone where it seems like guys respond to as a leader, that's important. If there's someone that's going to bring the energy levels up, we've seen him have some good defensive possessions this year. So if there's someone that's going to do that, there's value in certainly getting you into the regular season. But when teams have the ability to plan for you over the course of a 7-game series, when rotations are shrinking, and he's going to have to go up against tougher lineups, presumably tougher competitions, teams just do not respect what he can do offensively anymore. And there's always going to be yes, getting out in transition, and it sometimes looks like he could be a good finisher, but he's not. Like, statistically, he's just not a good finisher at the basket. And if you're going to get to a point where, okay, if he's playing with Jokic and it's passable and it's fine, and that where, I mean, if you're not better playing next to Nikola Jokic, there's probably no hope for you as a basketball player at this point. So I haven't had much of an issue with the Russell Westbrook experience, and you need these innings eaters during the regular season, and you need these guys that are culture setters, that are tone setters or pace setters, even on the court. But, like, when you're getting into important minutes during the playoffs, defenses aren't going to guard him. They're going to stick their bigs on him, excuse me. And that's going to create issues for everybody else. And that we can respond with, well, then Russ can guard their bigs on the other end of the court and they'll move. All right, awesome. Like, but you're giving up probably too much on offense. And if you're looking for someone to help you stay afloat when we get to the playoffs where Nikola Jokic is going to be on the bench for, let's just say 8 minutes, is just a round number. He's not going to be the guy that's primarily keeping you afloat. Now, if you have enough spacing around him, and if Jamal Murray's off the ball during those instances, and that's what you think you've unlocked, maybe. I guess you could say I'm slightly more hopeful that he would be a positive impact player during the postseason. But, like, you just dig into the season long numbers right now. Like, the Nuggets offense is 20-something points per 100 possessions worse with him on the court, and the defense is worse as well. Look, the bar is set high because he's logging a lot of non-Nikola Jokic minutes. But as a minimum guy, I think I don't have an issue with what they did. So it's such a loaded question. It's because it's Russell. We're not having this conversation, the campaign for the Knicks. Like, just kind of like he's doing his job there. He's had some pretty bad moments, but it's like you're not expecting campaign to help you win minutes without a star or to be a major contributor in the playoffs, because he doesn't have the resume that the previous iteration of Russell Westbrook did while he was still in Oklahoma City. And people need to detach themselves from that version of Russell Westbrook, or just because the name is so recognizable, you need to expect these great things. He's on a minimum contract. And I would say that I don't think that he has been super detrimental to the team by any stretch. And by all accounts, it seems like they really value him when it comes to the stuff that he does off the floor. And so I think there is real value in having Russell Westbrook on the court during the regular season. The most charitable way to put it when it comes to the playoffs is that's debatable, but I would skew towards no, that he's not going to help this team in the playoffs.
He works really well next to Nikola Jokic, mostly because he understands that he needs to get the ball to Joker while they're sharing the court, and he's really good at that. Actually, his passes to the paint where Nikola Jokic is are really sharp and on point. But there's another component to this, and he's making a lot of Kobe assists to Nikola Jokic because he is missing a lot at the rim, but Nikola Jokic is just inhaling all of those misses and putting them back. So it's actually pretty perfect pairing. Like this is why him without Joker looks pretty bad, because when he's not finishing at the rim and there's nobody there to get that offensive rebound, then it gets dire pretty quickly. I wanted to talk to you about a couple of teams that surprised many people so far this season. It's the new kids on the block, the Lakers and the Warriors. Like they have these new fresh stars in LeBron and Steph, and they're really good, both of those teams. Are they really that good, or is it just that the whole Western Conference is in some sort of transition with the Thunder losing some guys, so anybody can look both good and bad depending on the week? Or do you actually believe in Lakers and the Warriors?
I believe in the Warriors for sure. I've gone back and forth as to whether they still need like a traditional number 2 option when you get to the playoffs. I still kind of lean yes, but we saw them win in 2022 without a traditional number 2 option. And so the idea that you surround Steph and Draymond with high IQ depth, different degrees of spacing, and just like frantic defense, even post the Anthony Melton injury, it can work. And so there's real depth there. I'm probably less of a believer in the Lakers. They are shallower. D'Angelo Russell's been playing well off the bench, but are you going to get in a situation like they're talking like, oh, they might not want to move him. And it's like, if you're that tethered to the success of D'Angelo Russell, I don't know how to feel about your team. And we're also going to get to a point where, is Anthony Davis really going to be this available all year again? And so you're going to have questions about that. I think if they were to make a trade that kind of deepens their rotation by 1 or 2 players, perhaps for an actual 2-way wing, would be nice. I like what I've seen, and there's a material change in the way that they're running their offense. I don't know if they have the ability necessarily to be much better defensively, but when you look at Golden State, they have a lot of functional depth. And so if you're talking about teams, let's say neither the Lakers nor the Warriors make any significant changes, I think you have to trust Golden State just because of its depth and the performances it's getting just virtually across the board, more so than what you've seen from the Lakers, who are still very reliant on 2 players. And you have to ask yourself, how many players do you trust outside of, I don't know, their top 4 or 5? Like, do they even have 4 players that you really trust? Everyone's going to say, well, Rui Hachimura or the way D'Lo's playing right now, or look at what Dalton Connect can do. And it's all right. Like, but are those players that you trust? So I'm more skeptical of the Lakers than I am the Warriors.
Dalton Connect is amazing. Like, I really like that guy. And you know what? It's not as annoying as when every national podcast used to start talking about Taylor Horton Tucker while he was on the Lakers. That was really frustrating for me. Like just shut up with all the THT stories. But Dalton Connect is really awesome. And if you could say one thing about Rob Pelinka as a general manager of the Lakers, he sucks at trades, but he's really good at picking up guys.
Is he the one grinding film on those guys in the draft is the question, or does that say more about the Lakers scouting department?
Yeah, I guess you can go that direction as well. Okay, so you mentioned the Warriors and you really believe in them. We are still waiting for the other shoe to drop with Draymond Green, because he's been on his best behavior so far. So
he would he'd probably be defensive player of the year if Victor Wembanyama didn't exist. He's always incredible when he's available, but to your point, is he going to remain available or is he going to get suspended at some stage?
Yeah, because I just talk from my personal experience. I'm getting more easily annoyable as I'm getting older. So I'm getting the idea that he might not get better in that department going later into his career than when he was younger. But what do I know? What do I know? Okay, Dan, tell people where they can find your work. I just read your nice piece on Bleacher Report about the winners and the losers of the season so far. It was a really, really nice piece. 3 teams winning and 3 teams losing so far, and we covered most of them on this show already. But take the stage.
Yeah, I mean, another big winner too, the Rockets. We didn't talk about them, but you mentioned the Western Conference kind of just being in anarchic disarray to where it's, I don't know if there are a lot of great teams, but like the Timberwolves and the Mavericks aren't playing all that well just yet, and they're all trying to figure things out. Luka definitely has not looked right. When he comes back, hopefully his body winds up being fine, but the West remains hellfire. So that'd be a testament. Again, I feeling better about the Nuggets to wrap up on that. If Dan Favale I don't know what I said that did that. Was it me saying I trust the Warriors more than the Lakers? So that would
probably that. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, you can find my work obviously on Bleacher Report. If you want to consume NBA coverage at large, we do a lot of content over at Hardwood Knocks. So it's spelled exactly as it sounds. Go check me and my co-host Grant Hughes out there. We take what we do really seriously, but we have a lot of fun and try not to take it too seriously.
Thank you so much for coming to the show again, and promise me I will see you again before the playoffs, so we can cook the recipe for the Nuggets winning a championship again sometimes in like late March or something like that.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me as always, man. I appreciate it.
Okay, that's all I've prepared for you this week, my dear listener. And please, with the cherry on top, take the word prepared very loosely. Be well, be safe, be kind to everybody, call your mom, and until next week, Jordan McRae.